Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name is Kenny McBride and with me this evening is Chris McCusker, who is the Vice Convener of the SNP Socialist Group. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Chris. So, today we have saw Boris Johnson, our beloved new Prime Minister, make his way to Scotland for his first official visit. He made a few different visits. He visited Faslane first of all, and he also met with both Ruth Davidson and Nicola Sturgeon, in his mind, the two most important people in Scotland, I'm sure. So first of all, visiting Faslane for his first big photo op in Scotland, Chris. What do you make of that?
Well, last night Twitter was awash with conjecture and hyperbole of where Boris would likely visit, and the train of thought was that he would obviously go to the only Tory seat in the Greater Glasgow area, which unfortunately is mine, East Renfrewshire. But because I think this is just my take on it, that because Paul Masterton actually voted against the government in the last round of Brexit votes at Westminster, I think he's possibly fallen out of favour. Mm-hmm. So you would probably assume that Faslane was the best bet. Because obviously that's a symbol of the empire's strength throughout the world. So he may well sort of let go there and champion the might of the Royal Navy and the benefits that Scotland extols because we are under their protectorate. But I think basically he fell on his backside on that, judging by the expression of the people, the sailors in the mess hall. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I saw somebody suggesting that it might be just about the only place in Scotland that he'd be safe.
Yeah.
The most highly secured site in the entire country. But he did go there. He did meet with some of the sailors. Got shown round, I think, HMS Victorious. And I think, for me anyway, I thought it was interesting that with the kind of ramping up of this highly nationalistic, militaristic rhetoric that we've seen from the Brexiteers over the last couple of years, it did seem like quite a symbolic move.
Yeah.
To appear there and to kind of, as you say, promote the might of the empire, such as it is. But he did also have a few other meetings. But there's been a few things that have come out just in the last day or two from Boris Johnson and from his office around Brexit. And we've got a couple of quotes here. First one, he said, "Look, my approach is to be very outward going. I don't want the UK to be aloof or hanging back. I want us to engage, to hold out the hand, to go the extra mile, the extra 1,000 miles. And what we want to do is to make it absolutely clear that the backstop is no good, it's dead, it has got to go. The withdrawal agreement is dead, it's got to go. But there is scope to do a new deal. In our approach to the negotiations, we are not going to be aloof, we are not going to be standoffish, we're not going to wait for our friends to come to us. We are going to reach out, we're going to engage, and we're going to ask for obviously very, very profound changes to the current basis for leaving the EU. The present withdrawal agreement is dead, the backstop must go, but once the backstop goes, then it might be possible for progress to be made." Now, this quote just contains a number of contradictions. First of all, he wants to engage, he wants to go the extra mile, but he is insisting that the withdrawal agreement, and specifically the backstop, is dead and has got to go, when anyone who understands the Good Friday Agreement, anyone who understands Ireland at all, anyone who understands anything about the EU knows that the backstop is an absolutely unnegotiable part of the agreement that has to stay. And then this bit about we'll be reaching out our hand and we don't want to be standoffish. It turns out that he's not spoken to Leo Varadkar, the Taoiseach of Ireland, yet, and Michelle O'Neill from Sinn Féin said today, I would judge that it's highly discourteous that the new Prime Minister is not engaging with the Taoiseach. That is highly offensive given the disastrous impact of Brexit on the island of Ireland. And at the same time, Angela Merkel and Emmanuel Macron have both spoken with Boris Johnson and have both been told unequivocally that there will be no face-to-face meeting until the EU agrees that the withdrawal agreement is to be torn up and started again. I mean, even on a practical level, it seems difficult to completely renegotiate that deal, even if the EU wanted to, by the end of October. So what do we think? What do we think happens between Boris Johnson and the EU at this stage?
I mean, I can't emphasise this enough. The EU have said they will not negotiate the deal anymore. That's it. I mean, what part of that did the English Prime Minister, or does the English Prime Minister, and I refer to him as such because he is not my Prime Minister, what part of that does he not understand? You know what I mean? I mean, even the Taoiseach has said it as well, that, and I think it was a miscalculation that Boris came to Scotland first. And I think that has maybe sort of like showed his hand a bit, to be fair, because he must be, quite rightly, thinking about the perilous situation that he is facing with Scotland threatening to come out of the Union. Because at the end of the day, Southern Ireland's already entrenched in the EU, and the EU have been very, very supportive of Ireland, and he would have been best placed to go there first, and because that is where the bone of contention is. The bone of contention is not at Berwick. The bone of contention is on the border in Ireland, and to dismiss that because he thinks that Scotland is a bigger threat to the Union than what Southern Ireland is, then I think that's quite a big miscalculation. Again, even with the German and the French leaders categorically again stating that they're not interested in negotiating either, quite simply because they're going to take the line of the EU. They're not going to rock the boat to try and curry favour with England in any such way, shape or form. And I think just all this stuff about free trade deals and stuff like that, it's pie in the sky. It's complete pie in the sky.
Okay. And we've heard, for example, I think we have a quote there from Dominic Raab on renegotiations. Of course, over the long term, he says, whether we get to a deal before the end of October or whether that's not possible because the EU sticks very stubbornly to its line, we will want to put the relationship on a firmer footing. It will take both sides to show the pragmatism, the flexibility to make that happen. But I think it will be much easier, for example, to deal with the backstop issue in the context of a free trade agreement than it would under the current arrangements, which are so undemocratic. So actually, although there will be risks on all sides of this from a no-deal Brexit, I think the prospects of reverting and getting a good deal for the UK will be easier after we leave, if that's the case. And the reason being is we will do so as an independent third country and we will be less subject to, effectively, the demands and unilateral dictates of the EU as we are now. Do we think that might be even a little bit true?
Yes, it would also be. It would be wise again to listen to Dominic Raab because when I last spoke to you, I indicated that Boris had surrounded himself with people who were good at a specific task, which is what he wants to do. The downside of that is that most of the people in Scotland do not trust Dominic Raab on his previous record. But the overarching thing is that in surrounding himself with these people who will do his bidding, the main construct of the main construct of the cabinet is to have a surrounding amount of yes men. And if they are all speaking or seem to be speaking from the same hymn sheet, then that bodes well for Boris at the end of the week, when he can say that everyone was all in perfect unity when they were discussing various points regarding the outcome of either a deal, which I don't think they're going to get, or a no deal. Because when he was talking to Ruth Davidson today, and she was alluding to the fact that she had got a consensus with Boris, the consensus wasn't surrounding her support for, or should I say, her protest at a no deal. She was more going for the conciliatory approach of, yes, we agreed on the fact that we should be getting a deal, but she stopped short in showing any support for a no deal. That, although she's not in the Westminster sort of like setup, that shows a chink in the armour. And it'll be curious to see as to what side the 13 Tory MPs fall down on. Do they fall down on Ruth Davidson's side, or do they fall down on the side of the cabinet? And it just shows you who's going to be the stronger. Because the people like Dominic Raab and Priti Patel, they are stronger politicians, more seasoned politicians. And although Ruth Davidson has been in the position for quite a while now, the nucleus of everything obviously is at Westminster. You know, it is at Downing Street and all those cabinet meetings. And what influence the 13 Tories will have in that will be interesting to see. Maybe not influence, maybe influence is the wrong word to use. It would probably be allegiance, because if she's supposed to be the leader of the Scots Tories, and you know, if you remember that famous photo call where she was in sort of like front and centre of the picture when they were elected, but she's got no influence in the Tory whip. So if the Tory whip is guiding them to side with the government, where do their allegiances fall? Do they fall with Ruth Davidson, or do they fall with the Westminster government?
Well, on that front, of course, David Mundell, who we understand is very close to Ruth Davidson, was sacked apparently against her pleading.
No.
And Alistair Jack has been put in post, who is an arch Brexiteer. We also know that Ross Thompson is a great fan of Boris Johnson. A number of the others are apparently pro-Brexit, pro-Boris. Do we think that Ruth Davidson has now effectively lost that group of MPs to the allure of the power that resides at Westminster? Do we think that power that she had has maybe slipped away, or is slipping away?
I would say is slipping away. Possibly 2-3 weeks, time will tell. And that's how I can say with a bit of confidence that it will be interesting to see as to where those 13 MPs take the leadership from. You know, do they take it from Ruth Davidson, or do they take it from the Tory whip? And if if they take it from Ruth Davidson, then it shows a certain allegiance to her. But then it could be construed that if they take the lead from the Tory whip in Westminster, it means that really they don't have Scotland's best interests at heart. Because if Ruth Davidson is trying to portray her stance against a no deal, then they have to be supportive of her decision. And if they're not seen to be supporting that decision, because she reckons that decision is in the mutual interest of Scotland, which is consistent with Nicola Sturgeon's stance, then time will tell as to how you can decipher their side of the coin. As to what side that they're going to fall down on. Some of them may fall down on her side. I would suggest that the majority of them would side down on the Westminster side.
Well, we are, of course, hearing some rumours that there may be a general election in the offing. Perhaps Boris Johnson looking for a personal mandate for himself, certainly, but also looking for a mandate to leave the EU without a deal. How do you think that would play in Scotland? Do you think it's possible for even Ruth Davidson's flexible principles to accommodate standing to give a mandate to somebody she has called fundamentally dishonest, to propose a policy that she fundamentally opposes? Do you think that's something she'll be able to do? And if so, how do you think that might work?
Well, I don't think that she would be able to do that. The other thing to come out of her meeting today with Boris apparently was their mutual agreement and the stance against independence. That was one that she thrust into the ether first and foremost. That's where they found the common ground. And although she did bring up the no deal scenario, she was at pains to say that they do agree that a deal should be sought. But on the wider context of a general election, the recent polls have stated that there could be a landslide for the SNP. It could be 59 seats out of 59, which is an interesting concept when you remember that Thatcher famously said that Scotland just needs to bring a majority of MPs down to Westminster and your independence will be granted automatically. Again, I don't know, Boris is supposed to be a great admirer of Thatcher, but I don't know, if it extends that, I don't think he would extend that courtesy far enough.
Yeah, well, we do have a quote from him here about independence. This was, I think, earlier today as well. It was a once-in-a-generation consultation of the people. We did it in 2014, and the people were assured then that it was a once-in-a-generation consultation. I see no reason now for the politicians to go back on that promise. Everybody made clear at the time in 2014, even the Scottish Nationalist Party, I seem to recollect, said that this was a once-in-a-generation vote, and I think that the confidence of the public in politicians would be undermined yet further if we were to go back on that and hold another referendum. And the thing that struck me about this is that the Unionists, particularly the Tories, have tried very hard to make this opinion about a once-in-a-generation. And I remember very specifically Alex Salmond being asked about this, and he said that in his opinion, once in a generation seemed appropriate. It was not a promise, it was not a pledge that we would not hold another referendum. And of course, circumstances have changed quite drastically since then. And as you were saying about a further general election, we saw polling today for Westminster, 47% for the SNP and 3% for the Greens, which would take us to 50% for pro-independence parties. And as you say, there's a very strong chance that with that kind of lead, we would be looking at 59 seats out of 59. Of course, the claim of right would state that there's nothing that can take away Scotland's right to determine its own future. So do we think that the Tories now would be willing to just face that down and say, doesn't matter how many seats you've won, we're not giving you another vote?
Yeah, I think that the Tories will always view it as hyperbole. And I think that the Scottish Government have to go down a legal route and expose the lies of the Better Together campaign, which are out and out lies that haven't been totally refuted as yet. The amount of deceit when you're talking about the Better Together campaign, the collusion with Cambridge Analytica, the dark money from various sources from Northern Ireland right over to the west coast of Scotland, which taps into some relationship with a chap called Richard Cook, who is quite a high-profile Tory within Eastwood constituency, unfortunately. His connection with the various Russian oligarchs down in London and the money laundering through the sale of houses and stuff like that, which then got back to some sort of rubber company. He was buying used tyres and shipping them out to India, and nobody seems to be able to find this out. Some of the Irish reporters have done quite extensive research on it. It's strange that research hasn't been replicated onto the mainstream of BBC. Do you think it ever will?
Well, obviously, of course, these are all just allegations and rumours.
Alleged.
We are
allegedly.
We are making no firm accusations about anyone, but there are certainly a good number of questions about how.
Yeah, but I think that has to be these idiosyncrasies, shall we call them. These have to be challenged in court. If you challenge things on a verbal basis, it is literally just a game of political table tennis.
Yeah.
He said this, she said that, he said that. So, and Boris Johnson will always say, because, again, as you quite rightly point out, Alex said, in his statement, was that it was in his opinion. But then Nicola didn't reiterate again that it was in her opinion. Or the Scottish Government's opinion, because obviously people have got different opinions. You and I would have a difference of opinion, but the because that was not carried on, and quite rightly you can say, well, it's not carried on because it's more of a preamble. They were wanting to get to the thrust of the matter when you're under the pressure of giving an interview, camera lights, and all the rest of it. So you want to be quite succinct and straight to the point. How they construe that again across the benches of Westminster, you could play that out for a number of years. But I do think that they would need to launch some sort of legal action to try and investigate some of these alleged misdoings.
Well, as our producer here at Broadcasting Scotland said earlier on, winning the lottery is a once-in-a-lifetime event, but that doesn't stop anybody buying a ticket the next week.
Correct.
It's a turn of phrase. It's not a pledge or a promise or a guarantee, which is the way the Tories and other unionists have been spinning this for some time. But to get back to Brexit a little bit, we hear that there is a £100 million propaganda campaign to prepare us for no deal. Do we think that the fact that the government is committing that money towards it while also refusing to even sit down and discuss the issues with other European leaders until they back down, do we think that no deal is now inevitable? Is the withdrawal agreement dead?
Is this 100 million that you're talking about? Is this part of the 300 million?
No. This is a propaganda campaign.
Yeah. So we'll make that distinction right away. The first question is, after nearly 9-10 years of austerity, where is this money coming from?
It's a very good question.
The money tree was rattled, and Theresa May quite clearly told us that, and I mean us, the wider general public, that the money tree had no leaves left on it. So where this money is coming from has to be questioned. If it could be quantified, then you know it's down to Boris to justify the use of this money. Personally, I think that there's other better causes for it, and of course, obviously, it wouldn't need to be spent if we weren't in the pursuit of a no deal. So that's fairly simple to me. The wider question again is that once this is this not a wee bit like you made the analogy there of winning the lottery and it doesn't prevent you from buying another ticket. So if he was to then spend this, and to my mind, it's like throwing it straight down the toilet and flushing. You're not going to get it back if it doesn't actually do what he has earmarked it for. If it's not enough, what happens? Does he just say, right, okay, well, I didn't calculate it properly, or we just need to grin and bear it for the for the betterment of the union? This batten down the hatches, tally ho or tally ho, whatever the bloody hell the Etonians would say. When is not enough never enough? And that's I shouldn't be asking you the question. Obviously, I'm sort of like trying a bit of role reversal here, but an awful lot of people are. Excuse me. An awful lot of people are trying to second guess an awful lot of the statements that are coming out, and until we can countenance those arguments, because that was something that we didn't do very well in 2014. They constantly asked us the benefits of an independent Scotland, where and we sort of like got a bit tongue tied with the whole monetary system, immigration, passports, daft things, where we should have, and we should now be turning that question on its head and be saying to them, no, it's your turn to justify your union to us. And then, we can make up our mind. You put us under pressure in 2014, unduly, so we're going to put the pressure back on you. Your Prime Minister's coming out with all these, wonderful monetary pledges. So you tell us how that is going to benefit us. Then, we can make up a definitive choice.
Do you think that, £100 million honestly isn't even, it's apparently the biggest government advertising campaign since the end of the Second World War, which obviously was one of the great heydays of British propaganda, keep calm and carry on, and all these things. Is £100 million well spent, do you think, for this government if it convinces enough people that no deal is going to be okay?
Well, no, I don't, because if we weren't in the pursuit of a no deal, we wouldn't need to spend it. So therefore, it could go on some better projects, such as the homeless and the need for food banks, as well as obviously Scotland's wish to have its own drug consumption rooms. you know, so if you take everything and analyse it on a separate basis, rather than put what Boris wants to do is view it through the prism of the empire for what is best for all four competencies. But what is best for Northern Ireland and Wales may not be great for Scotland, but what's good for Scotland may not be very good for Wales or for Northern Ireland. So to my mind, I think that if we had a half decent Prime Minister, if that Prime Minister was any such way pragmatic at all, he would respect the fact that the majority of people in Scotland and the majority of people in Northern Ireland did not want to go down this road of Brexit. End of. We're not talking about a deal, no deal, WTO. Nothing. We wanted clearly and firmly to stay within the EU because clearly and firmly it suited us as European citizens. The free wish to travel, the free wish to go and study in another country. Being European is not. It's a conscious choice. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? When Britain does, and I have no doubt that it is now going to crash out on October 31st, do or die, as Boris has said, it's going to happen. And honestly, I hate to use the metaphor, but it will be like an aeroplane hitting a mountain. Personally, I think it's going to be devastating. On first of all, on the psychological basis, but secondly, there are reports out there that the British supply chain may not even last a month. Before we start seeing, day-to-day shortages of your general foodstuffs, and if that is going to happen to the food chain, then what's going to happen to the chain of medicine, which is obviously a greater concern, if not the same as food. So going back to my original statement, I think it's a false folly. Even if it said 500 million, it's still a waste of money because it is an action that is necessary. It is avoidable. Mm-hmm. He could say, right, okay, we're not going to give the Scottish Government 100 million, and we're not going to give Northern Ireland 100 million. So we're going to keep 300 million for England and Wales, and Scotland and Northern Ireland can do what they want, which would then free Scotland to have a conversation with Europe and say, look, we still want to be European citizens, irrespective of this sweetie that has been dangled in front of our noses at this moment in time. Because that's what it is. It's a carrot in front of a donkey. And that would be quite acceptable. And that would be the most pragmatic thing for him to do, because that would be respecting the wishes of Northern Ireland and Scotland and respecting the wishes of the majority of people in England and Wales.
And just to clarify a wee bit here, the 100 million I was referring to there is for a propaganda campaign,
yes,
to deal with no deal. What you're, I think, talking about?
No. But what I'm trying to say is that he wouldn't need to spend that propaganda money in Scotland, because we would be out of the equation.
I see what you're saying. Just on that note, though, there is also this 300 million that he's talked about for the other nations. That is to say, everyone except England. So it's 300 million between Scotland, North of Ireland and Wales, although I understand it's to be separated as 100 million
It
for
hasn't
each.
been,
Is that-
yes, it hasn't been quantified as definitely Wales will get 100 million, Scotland will get 100 million, and Northern Ireland will get 100 million. They haven't explicitly said that. They have just said that there is 300,000 for, between three countries. Now, the conversation that we had off camera regarding the extra money that the DUP already have, and the fact that we know, we can look back in history and see that compared to the paltry offerings that Scotland has received, Wales has been even worse off. So is that what my question is that because they have not specifically said Scotland will get 100 million, Wales will get 100 million, Northern Ireland will get 100, is it going to be equally shared? Will the DUP demand 1.3 and a half? And therefore, Scotland will only get, like 750,000. Do you know what I mean? And some sort of third percentage of the total sum. So I don't know if that's an error of journalistic reporting or whether it's just not being set out properly. We don't know. But again, it is like dangling another carrot in front of the unionist voter to say, look what I'm giving you as an equal sort of like share in this wonderful precious union that we all bathe in the, stop me if I'm waxing lyrical.
No. It does seem £300 million, even if that were all coming to Scotland, is still a fraction of a percentage of the Scottish budget. It clearly can't compensate for any of the damage. And of course, if we're really saving £39 billion by leaving without a deal and not paying the exit fees, if you like, then to only get 300 million out of that between the three non-England countries.
To put it in the Glaswegian, it's Wallies.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? It's absolute Wallies. 300 million is, we get that for a one-off project from the EU for infrastructure, for roads, stuff like that. So it's a token gesture, and it's laughable, but unfortunately, it's a usable soundbite.
Do you think that is just that they said what's a number that sounds big, and just hoping that enough people don't really think about how much 300 million is in the context of a country of 5 million people?
Well, as I said earlier on, do you know what I mean? It could well have been 300 million. It could well have been 500 million. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And it is. It's like a carrot in front of the donkey.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so as we say now, do you think now that no deal is the goal, or is at least what is now the assumed outcome? Do you think there is any real effort on the part of Boris Johnson and his team to actually find a resolution at this point?
No, I firmly don't. And before Boris was elected, I was ready for May's deal coming back for a fourth time, and again before the EU reiterated yet again that the deal is not up for renegotiation, I fully envisaged Boris to bring back a version of Theresa May's deal to be voted on again for the fourth time. Now, whether you could say that's Boris's first deal or whether you could say it's Theresa May's fourth deal, you can dress mutton as lamb and put a bit of mint sauce over it and nobody would know the difference. So it's not up for me. I mean, I don't know, but when someone says no, it's an unequivocal word. Do you know what I mean? That has no second guessing on it. You know, when your father said, "Don't touch that," do you know, because it's hot. Do you know what I mean? You know, he would no, and you would go, right, okay, you know best. So, to be unequivocally told that they will not open up any part of the negotiations whatsoever, and they will not tamper with the backstop, then that to me says everything. He is going to go for his complete no deal and scalp out on WTO rules, right? That then puts the onus on Southern Ireland, because he has quite clearly stated that he will not physically put up any barriers at the border. Now, obviously, Southern Ireland will be instructed by the EU that they have to put up a physical border. That then will get spun by the English Parliament as the fact that we're not putting the border up, it's the European Union that's putting the border up. So it's a very clever game that he's playing. And, you know, make no mistake, a lot of people say that Boris is a buffoon. He's not a buffoon, he's a very, very clever person. The game that he's playing, as Nicola has pointed out, is a very, very dangerous game. And it could have severe ramifications if that happens.
I mean, obviously, Irish politics is not our specialty here at Broadcasting Scotland, but what do you think is the outcome if we leave without a deal? If the EU is saying to Ireland, well, unfortunately now you do have to put some border infrastructure in place. That's a clear breach of an international peace agreement that the EU stands behind, that the US stands behind. I mean, I'm not sure what Trump's position would be on this, but
well, Trump would take the position of Boris Johnson,
and obviously Ireland desperately wants to avoid it. What do you imagine the outcome could be?
It wouldn't be. I don't think it would necessarily herald the return to, you know, the bad times. You know, I don't think it'll result in watchtowers. I don't think it'll result in. I hate punctuating in the air. It's so pretentious, but it won't result in armed police. You know, it will be a border patrol, very much as what you encounter when you cross Dover to Calais. Just for the avoidance of doubt, for Dominic Raab, that's quite a major crossing there. That's you know, of great significance. But they don't. The actual border patrol do not carry guns. There is an armed presence, but they stand on the periphery. I have yet to hear a story that they have been actually deployed and used. They have, you know, used on the Calais side. I know this to be true. As I said to you before, I do humanitarian missions out to Calais. They have used tear gas and at one point in time they have used rubber bullets as well. But, you know, so I don't think it would go back to the bad old times of the British Army on the turrets, or you know, a European army on the Southern Irish side and stuff like that on turrets. That won't happen, but, you know, it will be a physical border infrastructure, and Boris will be sitting back and saying, well, we didn't put that there, that was the European Union that have done that.
And given and this may be instructive to what happens in Scotland in the coming months and perhaps years, there has been talk, obviously, ever since the Brexit vote about a poll on Irish unification, which technically is the responsibility of the Secretary of State for Northern Ireland. They're supposed to offer a referendum when it seems likely that a yes vote may be achieved.
Yeah.
Now, it was always assumed that that would be perhaps when Stormont voted and said, we're ready to vote on this now. But with Stormont not having sat for best part of 2.5 years now, and no new elections being called, largely because the DUP have got the Tories over a barrel, do you think it's possible that there's a referendum on unification in the offing at all?
Well, not. There was a discussion in one of the broadsheets from down south today about the suggestion that it would suit the Westminster Parliament not to reinstate Stormont as an up and running competency, and much favour having England in the short term having direct rule over Northern Ireland. And that would suit them down to the ground. It would suit Westminster actually to have direct rule in Scotland as well. Do you know what I mean? Because it could just clear out Holyrood and make the MSPs pretty much redundant. An awful lot of people can view this exodus of civil servants from England coming up to Scotland to occupy an office block there. Beefing off this Scottish office that was created by Mandel. It would be interesting to see how much traction that now takes with a new man in charge. Going back to Ireland, going back to Stormont, there's another indication from Sinn Féin that is saying that they are unwilling to sit down, not because of the fallout of misappropriated funds by the DUP within certain projects in the area of Belfast itself and stuff like that, but the unfair advantage, as you quite rightly said, that the DUP have got the Tories over the barrel, and they're, what can we say, viewed extortion that they are holding the Tory government by in order to have a say, because the polls for Ireland to reunify is actually greater than the support of the DUP. So if they can hold on to this overarching cry for the union that is coming out of Westminster, they basically see that as, the last bit of wood on the mast. Do you know what I mean, of the ship that's going down? Somebody, a friend of mine from down south, got in touch with me and said that Boris Johnson has instructed Baroness Mone, if you remember, to re-establish and reinforce the use of the Union Jack in the Scottish economy. She's been charged with to be in, to take control of this.
Don't forget though, you can't eat a flag.
No, you can't eat a flag. That is very, very true. And contrary to popular belief, do you know what I mean? You can't burn one, apparently. There is something else that I could lead on from that, but I don't think the producer would be too happy. Again, going back to the DUP, so that is their raison d'etre. That is what they are desperate to hold on to, because again, with Northern Ireland voting to remain European, and everybody's wish not to return to the past, they have become a more, is there such a word as reconciliatory? And their attitude towards sort of like, the dark old questions of the past.
Yeah.
They're willing to move on from that. So the only people that are really holding on to it are the DUP. Now, I quite firmly believe when Sinn Féin said, back at the Good Friday Agreement, that they were laying their arms down for the betterment of their country, and they would cease any hostility in order to progress peace. I personally believe that, and I heard more platitudes from their side than what I did from the DUP. However, I never expected in a month of Sundays that I would see Ian Paisley and Martin McGuinness, sitting side by side.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, that's actually a good thing. But again, as long as they harbour to be a member of the Union, and Ireland just wants to get on, quite happy within the EU, not rocking the boat, just getting on with life and stuff like that, then I think that there's always going to be this, bone of contention. And as I say, that could be reinforced by the DUP constantly hanging on to the coattails of the Tory party in control, because with a general election, if the Tories were to get unseated, as the polls suggest that they are, they would hemorrhage quite a few seats. If Jeremy Corbyn did come out on top, I don't see him sitting down with the DUP and throwing wads of cash at them.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
So we've heard a number of really quite disturbing things recently. We have heard talk about direct rule in Ireland. We've heard a lot of talk about proroguing Parliament, or suspending democracy, as I prefer to call it. And Alistair Jack, the new Secretary of State for Scotland. I love the way you shake your head every time I mention his name. But he is an ardent opponent of devolution and has said that Holyrood should be just shut down and that direct rule is a better option. How likely do you think some of those options are, particularly direct rule in Scotland and the proroguing Parliament?
I think it's a clear and present danger, because they would, again, if they were successful enough to impose direct rule on Stormont, they could say that. Remember, David Mundell said something about what was it? What was his? There was something that he used when he was talking about a kind of like a joint working of the various competencies or various reserved matters and stuff
Scotland's
like that.
Two governments thing.
Yeah, that would need to run in parallel in order to reflect the powers that are coming back from the EU, right? Now they would that would negate the need to do that, with regards to Northern Ireland. And if it was successful enough, they would say, right, well, there's no need to do it with Scotland either, and there's no need to do it with Wales. So, in this transition process that has to, initially come, we would impose self-rule. We would impose direct rule for the next 2 years for the betterment of the whole four competencies. So they could do that, and an awful lot of people would say, well, yeah, that would make sense with all these civil servants that are coming up from England now to work in the Scottish office. So what is, is that something that's coming down the line later on? Is that a specific reason that Alistair Jack has been put into that? Was I find it hard to believe, but was Fluffy against it? I very much doubt it. But I again, going back to what I said to you earlier about surrounding himself with people who have got a niche skill set, I I believe that that's why he was chosen for the job. Do you know what I mean? Because he has a proven skill set. I don't know what Mundell's skill set was 9 years ago before he got that
Well, I think
appointment.
it was being the only Tory in Scotland. I think that was his major skill.
That was his major skill set, right? Okay, this Alistair Jack has two successful companies, as far as I'm aware. One selling tents. I think we done that joke last week. The other one is in storage space. So he's made his millions on that. He's got a massive big country estate that I believe he goes shooting and fishing and, you know, and watching.
I'm told that's one reason he's very popular with some of the senior English politicians, is because it's a lovely place to go and shoot.
Apparently, they go up there, shoot a couple of animals, and then, you know, they sit around the fireplace and discuss policy and tactics. It's a strange one, but it's one that you again would see that, because there was an initial breakdown, I think, between Mundell and Boris Johnson before he became Prime Minister. I think he was sort of like put out in the periphery to start with, and I think that the more and more that Boris seen that he was going to get in, he was going to say, right, well, I'm going to put my own people in there, you know, and that also buys into the wider rhetoric of the fact that he's doing things new. Do you know what I mean? And that's supposed to refresh and revigorate, you know, and give everybody a sense of optimism.
Now, we only have a couple of minutes left, and we've gone into some things in much greater depth than I thought we would today. So just two fairly quick questions. What do we think about an MP from Worcester being the choice for second in command at the Scottish office?
Sorry, again, I'm shaking my head.
Scotland office. Is it an insult to the other 12 Scottish Tories? Or do you think there's something else going on there? What do you think about that story?
I think it's both, unfortunately. I know you wanted a short answer, but I can't give you a short answer, because it is both what you suggest. It is a slap in the face with a kipper that was packaged in Le Mans under Great Britain's rules. It is a slap in the face for the 12 Tory MPs, and I would be affronted if I was overlooked for something like that. You know, never. I wouldn't be in that situation anyway. But you know, in that instance, you know, if you've sort of like worked to build your profile up and then you've just been overlooked in favour of yet another pair of safe hands, you know, again, someone who Boris has identified as being sympathetic to what Boris wants to achieve, and somebody who's capable of doing a job. Yes, it smacks more of, you know, the utter disdain that they have for our country. Earlier on, I wanted to point out that Dominic Raab, again, a major boo-boo clanger this morning when he said that Boris Johnson was visiting the region of Scotland. So that was again reinforced by, you know, there was some other minister that said roughly the same thing about 9-10 months ago. I wouldn't give Lancaster Council you know. So
Caroline Noakes.
Yeah. So again, it just shows, you know, the lack of regard that they've got for us. So you know, I'm sorry to not give you a simplistic answer, because it's not a simplistic thing that we're in at this moment in time. Do you know what I mean? Everything just goes arms and legs on a day-to-day basis. It's not, you know, one polar view of things.
Well, with that longer answer,
the next question.
we don't have time really to answer the last question. I was just going to talk very briefly about Boris Johnson anointing himself as Minister for the Union, which I can't help thinking. I've just started watching Game of Thrones. I know I'm late to the party, But I keep thinking it sounds like Boris Johnson, the first of his name, Prime Minister, First Lord of the Treasury, Minister for the Union and Mother of Dragons. I think that's his new title. So we are unfortunately all out of time now. And just before we go though, we would everyone at Broadcasting Scotland would just like to send out our deepest condolences to Claire Haughey, the SNP MSP, and her family. Her son Charlie died sadly on holiday in Amsterdam this week, and everyone here at Broadcasting Scotland sends out their very best wishes to her and to her family. And well, I mean, it's tragic news. We can only hope that they get through it. So thank you very much to Chris McCusker for joining us again. Thank you to you for watching. My name is Kenny McBride, and thank you very much for watching Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland.